Good evening to anyone who is watching. Close some stuff out here. Hi, Pat. Hi, Renee. I don't know if we are going to have that many humans attend this evening. It is a Saturday night, and but this was the night that was most convenient for moi. Hello, Marissa. Hi, Ulysses. Good evening, everyone. I'm so excited to talk about this book. Maybe I'm too excited to talk about this book. I don't know. I'm just excited. Okay. I wanted to give some humans some more time, but it's okay if we don't. I think that we can. Hey, Jennifer. I think that we are good um, to start because I do not know how many humans are going to be present for this. Okay. So let's talk about the Dirk 30, which was written by Patricia McKissick and illustrated by Brian Pinkney. This is a Newbery Honor book and a Coretta Scott King book, which is great. Those are two of the most prestigious awards that you can receive in children's literature. So it is a pretty daggone big deal. But I am happy to see whether people are here or not. I was happy to see that so many people actually had picked it up and so many people were enjoying it. That's always a good thing, considering that's a classic Black children's literature book. It's amazing. That never ceases to amaze me. Before we get started too, I'm going back and forth. For those of you who are here, you let me know what you were thinking. I was thinking that tomorrow evening, I am going to do the new releases for November. I was super, super busy in October and didn't get the chance to do it. So I probably will go ahead and do that live tomorrow night and try to knock it all out in like an hour because I don't want to be on here all night tomorrow, especially with the week that I have coming up. It's going to be a lot. So y'all let me know if that's a yay or a nay for tomorrow. But let's start off with our ratings. On a scale of 1 to 5, what did you give the Dirk 30? I'll let y'all rate first. And let me know what you thought. I can't believe I'm going to use this receipt as a bookmark because I need to. Okay, we have our first rating. Marissa gave it 5. Ulysses gave it 5. Let's see if some more come through. 4.5. Okay, you gave it for the art and the stories. Yeah. Mickey gave it 5. Okay. Okay. Renee gave it 5. Pat gave it 5. If anybody else would like to give their rating, I'm going to go to say it was a 5-star read for me. Hands down, definitely a 5-star read. Absolutely amazing. Although I expect nothing less in terms of art and storytelling. But it was very nice. Okay, next question. Since I gave you the opportunity to share your rating, if you could pick, and this is going to be hard because I don't even know how I would answer this question. From the stories, if you could pick a top 3, what would your top 3 be? And there are 10 stories in this. If I'm doing my math right, it's 10 stories. What would be your top 3 stories out of the 10 that are in it? And it's so surprising for me because I typically do not do well with short, like, story collections in general, but this worked very, very well for a number of different reasons. Yeah. It's definitely one of those books where I think some of those stories linger with you after the fact because the story is so amazing. My top 3, I wish I remember the details. If nobody has a physical copy of your book, the first one is The Legend of Pin Oak. The second one is We Organized. The third one is Justice. The fourth one is The 1159. Then it's The Sight, The Woman in Snow, The Conjure Brother, Boo Mama, and The Genji, or is it Genji? Hope I'm saying that right. And The Chicken Coop Monster. I cannot choose. I understand that. The Lady with the Child in the Bus Show, which is The Woman in Snow. The Tick Tock, which was the 11:59 with the clock, right, with the time up. And the one where the dad saves his whole family, which is that's The Sight. The Woman in the Snow and The Chicken Coop Monster. Okay. If I had to go with 3, and this is very, very hard. I really like The Woman in Snow. That was a good one. The Genji one creeped me out. And so I'd have to say that one. Dang. And if I really, because I just feel like Justice stood out for me because I feel like I think I resonated with that one to think about like how many of our like relatives, family members, ancestors like never got justice. And so it was kind of like seeing that justice on page, even if it's not real, was, I don't know how to describe the feeling that I felt with that, but I like that one too. The bus one, the one, Boo Mama was cute. I like that one. The Sight, yeah. 11:59, The Sight, and The Woman in Snow. Those seem to be fan favorites. 11:59, The Sight, and The Woman in Snow. But I think it's so fascinating about this is that I think that for a lot of Black kids, like you grow up hearing some of these things. And so it doesn't, for me, I guess for me, it didn't feel like it was too much, but I also come from a Southern family where stuff like this is often talked about when you were a kid. So it just doesn't feel like, oh gosh, this would be so much for kids to read. Yeah. Like I like wanting that vengeance. I think that's just sweet satisfaction to know that he had to pay for what he did. Okay, so we have a wide variety, but I feel like a lot of people love The Woman in the Snow. A lot of people loved 11:59, and a lot of people love The Sight, which is great. I wanted to ask this question because it actually took me a minute to make this connection, and I'm not sure why. I actually didn't notice this until I got to um, the Genji, which is weird because it's the second to last story. Did you notice that the stories were chronological through history? I don't know why. Like, I knew that that was what I knew that that was going to be the thing based off this summary, meaning that like I knew that they were going to touch in different points in history, but it took me a second to connect that the stories were actually in chronological order. And it didn't click until I got to the Genji story because then I was like, when she said the stress of being in the 90s, I was like, and then the Boom Mama story would have taken place late 60s, early 70s because it was during the Vietnam War. And so, yeah, it took me a second to it took me a second to realize that they technically are in um, some form of fashion of chronological order. She's actually going through different points in history, I think, to some degree. I think some of the stories go beyond where they start, but I feel like they all start at a certain point, if that makes sense. I'm sure y'all are like, Ashley, what? And I could just be making this up, but when I read it, I was like, these feel like they're in chronological order. Like, just the way that like they did the storytelling, or the way Patricia McKissick did the storytelling, and then also just the information that she provided in the beginning of each. I don't know. And then, like, for instance, it was just certain things here. Let me put it this way. It probably make more sense if I do it. if I go story by story. So the first one takes place during slavery. Um, and I think, sorry, oh, my eye is burning. I think she sets the stage with that introduction. And of course, you know the whole story, of course. Um, then with the next one, let's see. I wish my eye wasn't on fire, y'all. But my eye. The second one, which we organize, is also a slave narrative. Justice, I think, takes place during the 1930s. The 1159 takes place not too far after that because our main character would have been there during the founding of the sleeping car porters, which took place in 1926. But this is in the future. So this would be probably 30s. I would say 30s, 40s. And then I couldn't place a time, to be honest with you, with the 11. Yes, you can. I think I could. Hold on. You can with the 1159 too, because the date with that, when did she lose? Hold on, y'all. Maybe the site is the only one where I couldn't really put a timetable, but I thought I could, and it was something about Esau, World War II. So that would have been the 40s. That's how I put that one because Esau went and fought in World War II. The Woman in Snow would have been during the Montgomery, or close to the Montgomery bus boycott. So we'd say like 50s, 60s. I think the Conjure Brother was another one where I had trouble. I don't know if there was necessarily a clue about the date of this one. I don't think I could place a date with that one, but I know that Boom Mama would have taken place during the late 60s, early 70s. And then the Genji I was able to place because she said She blamed stress with a big S, the culprit of the 90s. So you can kind of figure out like the stories are in some ways sitting chronologically, which I was like, that's pretty interesting. Um, and of course, I didn't really try to date the last one because that was semi-autobiographical, which could have also taken place during the 90s technically because this book, well, not taking place during the 90s, but McKissick was writing this in the 90s, so I was just like, I don't know, but I do, based off of all that information, I was like, oh, okay, there's kind of like a chronological flow to this entire story where everything is taking place during a certain time period, which I thought was very unique. Okay, let's go through and kind of talk a little bit about the story. So the first one is A Legend of Pin Oak. How did we feel about this one? What were y'all's thoughts about The Legend of Pin Oak? Remember, this is the one where we have a brother selling a brother. One, they're half brothers. One takes over the plantation and sells the other brother out of spite, out of the relationship that he had with his father, or lack of relationship that he had with his father. Welcome, Luna. I think that this one kind of set the tone, and was kind of eerie. I didn't expect it to be that eerie, especially when she wove in the little kid who was doing research on Pin Oak, and then the fact that they ended up finding that letter that said that the family ended up disappearing, but then the family disappeared because the person that was supposed to help them never came across them. And I was like, yo, I was like, what in the world? Yeah. It definitely, I think, to set the tone of the entire collection. It was a pretty good story for me. Yeah. He did. He did, because that was like, but I think it also sets, even though it's set in a paranormal, like this, almost like a paranormal, eerie vibe to it, I think that it is a way, like I said, like you're using these stories to tell exactly what happens in history. So it was not like that introduction paragraph, which I think was one of my favorite parts about this collection, is that Patricia McKissick always provided a historical context to everything that she was writing. And so even though it's like, okay, this is a fictional story, it is very much rooted in the horrors that is slavery. And I actually heard the author that just won, Amina, who just won the Newbery and the Coretta Scott King for her book Free Water, talk about this idea, because that also it's about two children who have run away from the plantation, and they come across a maroon community, and they live there. And one of the things that she said that spoke to me when I was listening to her speak about her book was that no matter how much you think you can imagine how horrible slavery is, it's always going to be much greater than what your mind could even conceive, because we weren't there. And so, we hear these little tidbits of history, what's been documented, what's been shared through oral storytelling, and it still doesn't do the horror justice. And so this is like a part of history, I think, that people don't think about. Like, people don't think about, when people think slavery, they think, okay, white slave master owning slaves, horrible, cross T's, dot I's, I said, I'm done. But there are certain nuances to it, I think, that make it even more gratuitous. Like, thinking about the fact that you have a brother selling another brother makes it even more sick when you think about it, and one filled with so much hatred beyond the fact um, that his brother at that time would have been considered black and not biracial. Um, One drop rule, that's a whole nother thing. Um, it's unfortunate, but it's something that would have been done to continue to weaponize your whiteness, to exert this supposed authority that you have in being white, um, that you would go as far to sell your own blood to exert or to prove that you have that power. Um, and it's sad because the intention was, as he states, like, I was supposed to be free. Like, that was a guarantee, and this is how we've completely functioned. And so he ends up paying for it in the end because his brother was going to be free regardless of what he wanted in the end. And he wanted to separate that family and cause his brother that much pain because he felt like he could. Um, and I think it illustrates too, like, how much hatred can drive a person, how much bitterness and jealousy can drive people. And think about hatred and jealousy, and then tie that in with white supremacy, and it's just it's mind boggling. But when I tell you that was a hell of a way to start this collection, I really do think that it is it's wild. um it's wild to think that you, and also, before I move on, because I don't want to spend like an hour on each story, that was his biological father, mind you. Okay, like, I can't imagine how much therapy would have been needed if that was even a thing, because what we think of now in therapy and um psychiatric assistance, whatever you want to call it, um non-existent back then, right? Your own father, you have to refer to as master. I couldn't, that's why I keep going back to Amina's quote. Like, I couldn't, you can't really reckon with that. You can't imagine what that would feel like. You know it as a fact, but I can't imagine mentally and emotionally what that would have done to my spirit to have to look at my biological father and call him master and could not ever refer to him as father, but master such and such, where my father literally has the ability to sell me to someone else as well. You know, I think it's one thing with siblings, but it's a whole different thing when you have a parent who I can't. So I think whether, it's always difficult to determine um, the intentions, because we're trying to put ourselves into the mind of an author. And if they're not here, unfortunately, I don't know if y'all know, Patricia McKissick, of course, has passed a while ago now. But I think that, um, we try to think about what an author's intention was, and we never really know unless we hear them talk about their intentions. But with this, it was just kind of like, once again, how could you either, like, how could you fathom the horrors that was slavery? Um, Even when you read about a story like this, it's yeah, they did. They were very informative and definitely helped set the stage. Hello, hello, good evening. Cynical McKissick came out swinging with that story. She did. She definitely did. She came out swinging with that story without fail. Um, Without fail. And of course, um, Brian Pickney has a very distinctive style of art. It's a scratch technique. Um, that he does that actually it creates contrast in the pictures. I don't know if y'all have ever read any of or seen any of Brian Pickney's other works, but that is a technique that he is very known for doing, that scratch art technique. And so when I saw the art in here, this doesn't shock me. This is very, very much so his method, and what he is very, very known for. It's a very interesting way of creating um, contrast in artwork and how he does it. If you haven't seen any of his work in color, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. That whole family is just, they're amazing. Okay, so the next one after that was We Organized, and this one is actually based on an actual slave narrative, which I like the historical context behind this one as well. Um, a lot of people do not always know or not always taught that there was a point in which slave narratives were documented during the Great Depression. And so you have a lot of manuscript and information that is collectively made into, or personal accounts that were collected into a text that's known as the slave narratives. I don't know why it was so difficult for me to get that out. I am not, let me be honest with y'all. I am not a huge fan of poetry, which is interesting because I've read books in verse, but I am not like a person that automatically goes and picks up a collection of poetry to study, to analyze. I had to do that in grad school, and I promise you, I was never the same. Not grad school, I had to do that in undergrad in an English course. And I feel like it ruined poetry for me, to be quite honest, because I've never looked at poetry the same way since then. But this right here, vengeance. Okay, all right. This is where we're getting a um, a taste of vengeance, and it's this theme of collective. I don't want to say. How do I want to phrase this? This I don't want to say collective. It's this theme of community, and what happens when you have the Black community working together. Okay, which I think is definitely evident in the title "We Organized," and I think it also kind of foreshadows what happens, after this, when we start seeing organization in the civil rights movement. What happens when we have that collective agreement that we're going to push back against this system that is designed to harm us? And I think one of the favorite things that I liked about this poem is that when the when the plantation owner was saying, you need to take down the hornet's nest, and the narrator's like, no, I'm not doing that. And he said, it's not wise for me to mess with them. And he's like, well, why not? And he said, well, they're going to be trouble. They're organizing. And I said, you know what? Like, sometimes it's the most simplistic things that are like profound, because he's telling him, you don't want to mess with something that seems inferior to you and your perspective. You don't want to mess with something that you think is smaller than you, that is not as, and this is all from a very, I think, bigoted perspective, something that's not as intelligent as you are. You view it as a lesser being. You might want to be mindful when they are organized. There is a collective. And so he's basically telling him, the same way I'm telling you not to mess with these hornets' nests, I'm telling you, you might want to be mindful of how you're treating us. But of course, he naturally he's not going to listen. And so the narrator goes on and says, I tried to warn him. he didn't want to listen, and he was warning him. Not directly, but he was giving him that analogy to work with to say, hey, if I were you, I wouldn't do this. I would not do this. And so I think like the whole idea that there was this organization um, that caused him basically to um, he basically was like, I'm done. I'm done. Y'all have damaged me. And it gives tribute to, I think, the spiritual and religious practices of our ancestors that I think a lot of times I find to be, and this is just my personal opinion, I feel like it's like um, it's something that is always argued and debated, but I think this is a good example of those religious and spiritual practices of our ancestors that we often neglect or view as evil or demonic, and they're not. you know so for me personally, when I read this, there was a little bit of that. um there was a little bit of an ode to that, the idea of um having respect for your ancestors, calling on your ancestors in time of need. And nowadays you'll find people who consider that to be blasphemous, but you have to also understand, I think, the history of your ancestors and how that has always been a practice. And I think understanding and studying where those practices were lost and why they were lost, and why now they are viewed as something that they never started off being in the beginning. So um, but yeah. But that you're right, Jennifer. That last line. Now you asked me how we all got free for Massa Lincoln signed the paper. Take heed, like them hornets we organize. Um, which is true. I like that. That was another. I just all of them were good. To be honest with you, there's not a bad story in this book. There's no bad stories. I it just was was not any bad stories in this at all. Yes, that is the story that we always hear, is that Lincoln is the white savior, which is so unfortunate. And it's just now, I think, in recent years that as not everyone, but I think in recent years, the general public is understanding that Lincoln himself was a separatist. He did not believe that white and black people could coexist. And when asked, he would have, he wants the power that is associated with being white. He would prefer that. So I think that this whole idea that he signed the Emancipation Proclamation, and like you said, those that were enslaved took no agency for their freedom is foolish. it is it is a load of crock, and it's a load of shit. Um, and I wish that we would stop paying dues to a person that only made the decisions that he made to save the Union. And that was the motivation behind it altogether. It had nothing to do with really understanding the ills of chattel slavery. That was not the intention. And you have to think about too, like, which I really want more people to read. If y'all haven't read Free Water, please read it. You need to read it. And I just keep talking about it because that's something that I did this week, and it's definitely in my mind. And understand the agency that a lot of enslaved people had, they took into their own hands. That it wasn't, which I get frustrated when this generation says we're not our ancestors. I find it to be very disrespectful, because the things that our ancestors did is phenomenal. I knew about maroon communities because of my ancestry with my dad and that side of the family being from Jamaica. But if you haven't heard about that and you want to talk about agency and community and learning to or taking your fate into your own hands and not waiting for someone to force you, or to not force you, waiting for someone to tell you that you're free. I definitely recommend looking that stuff up. So yes, yes, he did. Yes, he did. Yes, yes, yeah. His motives behind it, which but they grow up teaching you something completely different. I actually read a children's nonfiction book about Lincoln not too long ago, and I couldn't, in good faith, give it a high rating because I think historically it pushed a narrative that was inaccurate, and definitely put Lincoln on a pedestal that is not deserved at all. I think you're gonna like it, Renee. It's very interesting. Actually, I talked about this in a vlog that I have coming out next week. I got like 70 something percent into the book and I'm starting over. I like stopped and I'm starting over because I just feel like I need to, that's when I need to annotate. Always. Always. All right, let's talk about the next one, Justice. This was one of my favorite stories. This takes a look at the Ku Klux Klan. Um, Another one of these stories that highlights just how horrible things have been in this country historically. I think once again we always get into this cycle of believing that once the Emancipation Proclamation was signed, it was done. And this is why I think I, as a person, I was talking to my dad about this. My dad was born in 1958, right? Um, this is my stepdad. Um, I was talking to him about this and my frustration because I often hear people who associate slavery with critical race theory, which is is asinine. But people often say things like slavery was X amount of years ago. Why don't you just get over it? That's weird to say, just get over it, one, because we're not going to even talk about collective trauma or generational trauma. We're not even getting to that. But I think people think that once the Emancipation Proclamation was signed, the plight of Black people in America was done. Like that was it, honey. Like we suffered no more. As soon as Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation, all this shit was done. That is mine, and people really do function that way. But I think that this story, Justice, is a good example of the terror that Black people constantly face, even after, um, even after slavery was ended. And I put that in quotations for a plethora of reasons because when you design a system so that people cannot succeed, we are still in bondage, to be honest. Like there is no look at you and I being on this right, we're right here. Yeah. When I think about it in from a systemic perspective, slavery is not over. I think um it's different. It's under a different name, in a different it's wearing different clothing, but it is still a system of oppression. It's just designed to look different. Um but anyway, I often tell my dad I get very aggravated about that because my dad grew up during an era where, as did my mom, but he's older than my mom, so he sees just, he saw a little bit more than I think she did. But they both grew up in the South. He grew up in rural Georgia, which, if you know, rural Georgia now in 2023 is something that a lot of Black people still don't play about in rural, and it's 2023. And my mom grew up in rural South Carolina. So I hear things from them. Now, mind you, I'm 32. I hear things from them about what they experienced when they were kids. There is no slavery is over and the legacy is done, because I still am in the presence of a generation that has dealt with the things that we see in this specific story. Seeing Klan rallies, knowing your grandmother telling you when you see a white man come, da 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 da, you go in a house. Or when there's a white woman, especially with my dad being a black man, when there's a white woman, cross the street and keep your head down. Like, hearing that, this is not something that people are like, oh, it's in the history books. And it's like, no, but literally we can turn to people and pick up the phone and call them and they can tell us about this stuff. So this story for me was it was one of those examples of the end of slavery is not the end of the terror and the oppression. And the amount of people outside, we're talking about the people outside of that were no longer formally enslaved. Let's put it that way. We're talking about the people who are no longer formally enslaved being killed with no repercussions whatsoever. No repercussions. None. There are people who are still alive today, and I know this is bad of me and people can drag me through the mud, but when you hear what I have heard growing up with two parents who grew up in the South during the mid 20th century, I look at older white people who are the same age as my parents or maybe 10, 15 years older, and I'm looking like, well, what were you doing back then? What were you doing? Because I can't imagine the amount of white people who are living today that mutilated Black bodies and got away with it. No prison time, no sitting in front of a judge, no jury, no nothing. And it's disgusting. And it angers me the amount of Black families that had to have closed casket funerals because the bodies were so mutilated that they couldn't even show them to the public. So I think, like I said, I think there was anger. There has been anger. And every time I hear a story from my mom or my dad and the things that they heard growing up, the things that they saw growing up, my mom could tell me still about her experiences sitting at the top level of a theater, rural South Carolina, and not knowing at that point that she had to sit up there because she was not allowed to sit at the bottom. And being a kid and so naive in that moment, of course, eventually her innocence was stripped from her very quickly about her existence as a Black girl, as a dark-skinned Black girl at that. Just being a kid and not, I get to sit up here because it's cool, and not realizing I have to sit up here because I'm Black. So there's a lot of anger that I think I have in my heart sometimes when I hear things about what they experience as kids and how that has impacted them, and how honestly you can pass that trauma onto your kids unintentionally, but you could pass that trauma onto your kids. And it's just like all these people who did these things don't even pay for it. They never face any repercussions. And so for me, this story is like me living out like a nasty vengeance on anyone who has ever harmed a Black body, broken Black spirit, soul, and has gotten away with it. I couldn't imagine living during this time, especially during the height of the Ku Klux Klan. I could not imagine living during the height of that era and how much fear Black people were living in and what type of PTSD that caused. To be in constant, and how unhealthy that is, to be in fight or flight mode constantly and knowing you really can't fight back because that's almost a death sentence within itself. And then so we step into this story and we have this guy who literally is like, I took an L for you once. I'm not going to take an L for you again. I'm not about to do that. I'm not going to take an L for you again. And when he literally has done nothing wrong, even back then, your word against a white man's word was nothing. It was nothing. It meant absolutely nothing. And if you got off and they felt like you shouldn't have gotten off because you needed to take responsibility for something that they did, you were going to pay for it. And it's sad. I think one of the saddest parts of that story for me was that for a lot of Black families, you just go on. Life carries on it because it was so prominent that you grieve, you mourn, and you keep on going. It's the next day because it was so commonplace for them to beat people up, mutilate their bodies, string them up and fire and set bodies on fire. Like that was like why? Used to do that shit and have picnics. Like that is sick. And people who participated in those things are still alive to this day. And I can't tell you how angry, like I'm getting angry right now. Like my body's literally getting hot right now, thinking about the fact that those humans are still alive today. And I have to listen to people say racism doesn't exist anymore. The people who perpetuated it are still living and breathing and breeding generations of more racist humans. It's disgusting. It is so disgusting. Sorry, y'all. That was a little bit of a rant, but I think the sick part of me really enjoyed that story because facts. People power another path to do that. Like change will keep hence, yes. Yes, 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 yes. Yes, yes. Yep. I just can't. Plantation weddings. Yeah, I went to school in Charleston, South Carolina. So grade school, part of grade school, not all of grade school. And so when I tell y'all, downtown Charleston is like, it's hard for me to be like down it's a lot. It is, that is. Yes. Would bring your children. And they feel like that doesn't continue to breed hatred or yeah. Whew. Jeez. Okay, we're going to move on. Because once again, y'all, okay, the 11:59. The 11:59. Okay, it was a couple of y'all who said the 11:59 was one of your favorites. Can you tell me why? Why was the 11:59 one of your favorites? I will say that I loved once again that historical reference, that little piece of history. Gosh, McKissick did such a great job at this, y'all. The context given is so amazing. Just talking about the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters, I think is just like, yes. Yes, love that. Okay. This was your least fave. Can you tell me why this one was your least fave? I did like Brian's illustration at the end of this one. I really did. I like that one. I think this one is a really interesting look at like it's almost like a level of I don't know. I don't know if it was meant to give you a sense of comfort about death or not. This idea that death is inevitable. Hey Ray. I don't know if that was necessarily the intention behind it, but it did make me feel that way. And I like the little like pop of humor that we got at the end of the story. Because yeah, there we go. Like this. Yes, I do like that little pop of humor that we got at the end where he was like, "Man, you know you can't outrun death," and he's like, "But man, you know I had to try." Then his friend's like, "You know I tried too." Like I think it's this. I think I'm in an age right now where I still have not reckoned with this understanding that death is inevitable, you know? I'm still in that naive place where you're like, I want to live forever, but then not really. But then it's like, I feel like I haven't accomplished everything I want to accomplish. I haven't done everything I want to do. But one thing that I did like that she did with him is because he had that moment of doubt too. And I think where I'm at in my life, being 32, I think that I'm still kind of stuck in that first phase where he was like, man, he heard the whistle at 11:59. Um, and he's like, I haven't accomplished. What if I would have done this? What if? And then his attitude kind of shifts and he's like, no, I'm happy with the decisions I made, and almost this kind of acceptance of I lived the life I was supposed to live. And I can't think about the what ifs. And I think that for me personally, sometimes I can struggle with what if I would have done this? What if I wouldn't have done this? What if I would have made the decision? But understanding that every step that I've made, every decision that I've made, every outcome is the way that it was supposed to be. It is how that's the path that my life is. And so his kind of acceptance of that, and I was like, as I go through life, I too will have to get to that point where what I've done, what I've experienced, the life that I live is my life. Um, and that is, you know, that is it. That is the way. Yeah, this one I think wasn't. I think this is one of those like, for me, I imagine like a grandparent, or like I could imagine like my great grandmother, who has passed. Uh, what is it now? 5 years ago, um, since she passed, and I could imagine her telling me something like this if like I was fearful of death. Um, that there's nothing to be afraid of, and everybody has a time. You have to go. Um, but be content with the life that you have lived. Like, I don't know. I almost made myself emotional with that because it's literally been 5 years since she passed. So, but yeah, okay. Let's go on the third one with Alvin and Hoops. Jennifer, the next one is the site after 11. No, the third one is Justice. The third one is Justice, which is the KKK story. The fourth story is 11:59, and then after that is the site. Um, yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, it's kind of, not to deviate, but I'm gonna deviate because I feel like something in my spirit is telling me to say this. When I was pregnant with my daughter, I was very afraid of dying. Um, and I think it was because I had a sorority sister, not someone who crossed with me, but I think she'd crossed maybe like two lines before I crossed. Um, and she died giving birth to twins. And it was around the time that I was pregnant. And so that instilled a lot of fear in me when I was pregnant. I was very, very scared. Um, some of you may have heard this story because I've told it a couple of times, but I'll never forget I had a dream. At the time, I felt like my great grandmother was coming to me a lot. And my daughter is actually named after my great grandmother. Um, and I remember her coming to me in a dream. And she was like, why are you afraid? And I told her, I was like, I'm scared of dying. She's like, girl, stop. There is nothing for you to be afraid of. She's nothing. You don't need to be scared. There's nothing to fear. You're going to be fine. So mind you, now I have this dream. Okay. Um, then, um, when I give birth to my daughter, it's me, my daughter, my mom, and my dad in the hospital room. And everybody's tired because if you have kids or you know anybody that has had kids, those first few days are a complete blur for everyone involved because you're just tired. No one's really sleeping. And sleeping in a hospital is never pleasant. Um, and so the day after I gave birth to her, which would have been my birthday, my mom and my dad both wake up. And the first thing that my mom says is, someone's missing. So my dad looks around. He's like, oh, no, because like there's four of us. No one's missing. But he said if it feels like there was a fifth person. And now keep in mind, my parents had never heard the dream. Nothing. They had no idea that I had this dream. And mom kept saying, she's like, I feel like there was somebody else in the room with us. She said, but they're not here anymore. And it wasn't until after the fact that I told them that I had a dream that my grandmother had came to me and told me that I should not be afraid of dying and that everything was going to be fine. And so I just felt like she was there in that moment. Same thing when I bought this house. I can't say it online because it will reveal too much about where I live, and that's absolutely no. But my mom had a dream that she was talking to me. She said she couldn't hear the conversation, but she said she was talking to me about a house. And she just saw it from a distance. Now, keep in mind, I had a dream and I actually was talking to her about a house. And then the neighborhood that we're in is the name of the neighborhood is a flower, which is my great grandmother's favorite flower. So when I tell y'all this right here, when I am big, like ancestors, and that feeling and that belief that our ancestors are with us, like I very so much believe that. Sorry. I just had to say that because I just had to say that because it just, yeah. Yeah. Okay, on to the next one. Sorry, y'all. I apologize. All right. Let's go to the site. What were our feelings about the site? How did we feel about that? I think some of you said this was your favorite. Why was the site your favorite? Now I'm trying to find my page. Okay. Oh, yeah. This is about the veil. The ability to see the future. His daddy was, let me tell you, his daddy was all types of jacked up in this, okay? Let me tell you. This definitely reminded me of one of, like, something, once again, that elders would tell you, a story that elders would tell you about gifts that you could receive, which I think is interesting. Yeah, especially when you think about the concept of midwives, as Patricia says in the beginning, and the role that they would have played a long time ago, which I think that the doula midwife is becoming once again, a more common practice for a lot of women, especially Black women. I always tell people who I know, Black women that are pregnant or thinking about having kids, to make sure you have a midwife or a doula. Especially when we're thinking about the relationship between the medical community and the Black community. And from my own personal experience of having an anesthesiologist give me a lower dosage of epidural on purpose, um, birthing experience with hell. I definitely recommend it, but I did not know that little tidbit of information about the veil was something that was completely new to me. I did like the idea of the family, like the family being able to come, like, hear him. That was not what I was expecting. I don't know that I saw that. I was like, dang. It clicked when he realized that, like, he sent his family to his mother's house, and that was the actual house that was on fire. But I didn't think about him being able to, like, communicate with them and tell them, like, wake up, get out the house. I think that was That was such a beautiful moment, which I think goes back to um, how connected Esau and Charity were to each other and their kids. And I like that he kind of I don't know if, once again, if this was Patricia McKissick's um, intention, but I like how he broke the cycle. His father was like a piece of shit. Uh, his father, his father was horrendous. He was awful. Um, his father was absolutely awful, and I like that he did not, by any means, follow into the footsteps of his father. He became everything that his father wasn't, even after. His father was absent, even after his father um, was um, abusive and took him away from his mother. He did not allow that to become he didn't allow that to dictate like who he was as a person and what type of relationship he would have with his children. And that to me was everything, because I think that's so important, um, just in a general sense, not to, if you have kids, you try your hardest, or you want to try your hardest not to allow the way your parents parented, especially if it wasn't a positive experience, dictate how you are as a person and how you may inevitably raise your own children, which is easier said than done. It takes a lot of it takes a lot, and I'm saying this personally, it takes a lot of active thinking in the moment when you know you can react or do things the same way that your parents did, and you have to act like, no, you can't function the same way, because this is what it did to you and impacted you as an adult. I really appreciated that. It is. Yeah. Yeah, it's so complicated. Like it's extremely complicated to have that gift, and how easy it is to abuse that gift. How easy it is for people to take advantage of you when you have that gift, which is, yeah, yeah, it is. Um, Chucking right along, y'all, because we're already at an hour. Um, what was the next one? The Woman in Snow. I need to see more engagement on The Woman in Snow, because let me tell y'all, so many of y'all said that you like The Woman in Snow. What was it that made you feel like you like The Woman in Snow? This is the Montgomery bus boycott one, where we have the white bus driver who hated taking his route to go pick up black domestic servants, which my great grandmother was what would be considered the help. I actually did an entire history thesis on her when I was in undergrad about her experience. And she continued to do that even when I was a little kid, because I remember her taking me to houses. And of course, the experience that she had later on when I was a kid in the 90s was not the same that she experienced um, any type of domestic work because she was doing before. But either way, white guy doesn't want to pick them up, comes across a woman who's clearly outside. It is snowing, cold, clearly in need of help, has an infant, is requesting assistance to go to the hospital to take care of her child. And he is so filled with hatred that he couldn't even have a little compassion in that moment for a person um, who is in a horrible position and just wants to do nothing but take care of her child. That to me, I think that whole exchange to me kind of blew my mind, that even, to look at a child, an innocent child, and be like, whatever, he got what he deserved. He got exactly what he deserved. Yeah. Yeah. I think, too, like, I think too, it's that lesson of no matter who you encounter in life, show as much respect and kindness as possible, because you never know. You never know who that person could be, especially if you are someone who thinks we interact, or you believe that we interact with beings that are not necessarily even here physically. Physically anymore. But I think that idea of being compassionate, of being caring, and I think even if he didn't know what was going on, like he just was a kind person, who wanted to help. Um, and it's having humanity, you know? I think that is something that we are definitely, it's sad to say in 2023, that I think we society, like as a society, like we are we're losing our humanity. I have never seen such disregard for human life, um, as I have seen in the past few years. It is atrocious. It is disgusting. Um, and it makes me concerned about this, the souls of people. Like, do people have souls anymore? Because I don't know how you can look at a human, um, or you can look at people and have such a disregard for their life. Like I can't, or like, empathy or compassion. Um, and that's all she wanted, was someone to, great point, wanted someone to recognize her and be treated with decency. And it wasn't even the fact, I think too, it wasn't even the fact that he just drove her from point A to point B. It's the fact that he continued to try to have a conversation and engage with her, and didn't even know really if she was aware of the conversation happening, but just, you know, you're struggling right now. I'm gonna have a conversation with you like I know you. I don't know you, but I'm just telling you, things have changed. Things have gotten better. I'm just gonna talk to you. Not even realizing, and I always tell people too, like sometimes people just want to talk to someone, or want to listen to someone talk to them, so that there is this acknowledgement that they're human. Even like, working in a library, I see a large homeless population. Um, and, there are struggles sometimes, I think, with that community in terms of what can go wrong. But, I think the decent thing that I can do, regardless of whatever the circumstances may be, whatever is currently going on in their life, is to speak. Good morning. How are you doing? Can I help you with anything today? Like that simple, I think, acknowledgement of someone being a human, even in their worst moment in life, is the least that we can do, because sometimes that means a lot. Um, yeah, sometimes that means a lot. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You owe me nothing. And it was kind of like, release whatever burden is keeping you attached to this earth. I want you to I think it was just the confirmation of whatever burdens or unfinished business that you have here. I want you to know that you can let it go. Let it go and move on in peace. And that's what she needed. She needed that peace for her and her child to be able to move on. Um, Very good storytelling, but Patricia is just a good freaking storyteller. Oh my gosh. All right, the next one. The Conjure Brother. Um, if I had to say, if I had to pick a least favorite, I mean, they were all good, but if I had to pick a one that was my least favorite out of the collection, I probably would say The Conjure Brother. Um, I think it's a good lesson of be careful what you ask for, because things are not always um, what they seem, and I think that this is also like one of those that is a kind of cute and charming. It's using um, those historical elements that we know as a Black community, like the idea of conjure, root magic, and its existence and its prevalence in the Black community and what that means, and then using it to teach a lesson to kids in the sense of, be careful what you ask for, because you just might get it, and when you get it, you may realize that this is not what you want, or even if you get it, there's a lesson to be learned in it. Um, like I just I think that, like for me, I think when my daughter gets a little bit older, like that is a story that I would read her. If, it's like, well, I want, and it's like, be careful what you ask for, because you just might get it, baby, and it's not what you think it is. And so I think the main character in that one definitely learned. She's like, oh, I want a brother, I want a brother, I want a brother. And I thought it was cute. Almost the innocence to it is that, oh, basically her mom and her dad had to talk with her about where babies come from. And first, mama has to get real fat. It was like, to be honest with you, I think that this one, even though it technically was like my least favorite, um, I think that um, it was a nice break, because I think we're in a lot of these, we're getting such um, dark and heavy, although important, dark and heavy topics, that this one was kind of a switch up to, like, it felt a little lighter, and more like still having that historical information that's important to the context of the story, but also like this moment where it's just like, okay, here's a lighthearted, let me tell you, listen, good point. Follow those rules. Follow those rules, follow the instructions that are given to you. When your elders speak to you and they're telling you something, listen and follow their guidance and their rules, and be careful what you're wishing for. Like, this is one, as a parent, I think I appreciated more than anything, to be honest with you. So it's like, my least favorite, but I still took so much from it, which I think is great about um the entire collection. I'm sorry, y'all, I feel like I missed some comments. Yeah, yeah, it's sad, but also heartwarming in the end. Yeah, you don't have any interaction. There's no human interaction there. Oh, of a Goosebump story. Okay. Where he says there, but for the grace of God goes one of mine, and goes or not, she deserves better. Absolutely, Kim. Whom kids would really, really, I think so too. I think so too, because, especially when you're at that age where you feel, I don't have to follow instructions. I know what I'm doing. I like, it was kind of like her attitude, like, I know where babies come from, and like, I know that I want a baby brother. And it's funny because even then, like, even when she went to the Conjure Woman, right? And she was telling her, she was like, oh, but he's annoying. And she would come back with a line, and she'd be like, wait, he's not like that annoying, you know. He's okay. And she's like, oh, he's horrible. Da, 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 da. The country would be like, okay, well, let's do this and this and this. She's like, wait. I don't want you to do all of that. I just basically was like, I just came here to complain. I don't want you to hurt him. I just came to complain. And then I thought it was funny when she said, you know what, never mind. I'm just all types of confused right now. I'm just confused. I'm just confused. I'm just confused. And the Conjure Woman warned her in the beginning, honestly, because she's like, oh, I have a brother. And I'm telling you, it's not what you want. It's you think you want this, and I promise you, it's the grass is not greener on the other side. Like, it's kind of the same way I tell my daughter right now. Like, she's like, oh, I can't wait till I grow up, when I get older. And I tell her now, even at 4, don't rush to grow up, because it's all a lie. Okay. I wanted to rush to be an adult, and now that I'm an adult, I'm like, I would pay to not be an adult anymore. But yeah, let me tell you, funny. It was a nice, because when I think about like the order of things, um, between what we see with starting with the Legend of Pin Oak and then the Woman in Snow, I definitely feel like the Conjure Brother is the light, is kind of like that light break that we get, which I appreciated, humor and all. Don't mess up a spell. She sure enough did ask her, did you do the spell? She's like, well, I didn't, I couldn't stay up till midnight. And it's like, girl, If you didn't do the spell right, what you expect to happen? And I thought it was cute, like at the end where the mail carrier was it a mail carrier who was like, oh, um, what was her name? Because I don't know why I can't remember her name. But when the mail carrier was basically like Madame Zinnia, and the mail carrier was like, I don't know who that is, but I like that we still know that Madame Zinnia was there. And I feel like Madame Zinnia was literally only there to teach Josie a lesson. Like that was it. That was her only purpose, because those yellow roses that were in full bloom, which she was tending to, just were still there. And which is why I think that Josie kind of like smiled at the end, because it was like she knew. She came to teach a lesson, which I think speaks to the versatility of conjure people, and those that practice roots magic. Once again, it's one of those things where I feel like people um, now consider a lot of that, which is so tied to our history and our ancestors, as being evil, and it's not. And I think like this also, once again, like I said, I think it speaks to the versatility of like, yeah, I gave you the spell, but I gave you the spell to teach you a lesson about life, and I don't know. Yeah. Once again, least favorite, but is it really? Because it's so good. No, adulthood is trash. And do exactly. It does. It does. It was like, I can't stand it. But wait. No, you can't. You can't hurt him. I mean, I'm telling you, I don't like him, but I just want to vent to you. Yeah. What was I in a rush for? Yep. Ooh, I haven't seen that in so long, Pat. Oh my goodness gracious. Haven't seen that movie in a long time. Okay. Next story after Conjure Brother is Boo Mama. I did not know what to expect when I saw the title Boo Mama. I said, what in the world? Boo Mama. Um, there was a couple of things about this one that I found interesting. I think the one being losing hope. Um, Losing hope, especially during this period, which would have been late 60s, early 70s. You see Malcolm X um, being assassinated not too long before this period, a couple years before this period. Martin Luther King Jr. being assassinated, Kennedy was assassinated, his brother was assassinated, and I think one of the lines that stood out to me in this one was when she said, at this point, whether we do it peacefully, which I think still holds true to this day, whether we fight for justice peacefully or whether we take the road where it is an eye for an eye, um, it doesn't matter. Like it doesn't matter. There is no way um, to conduct revolution in a way that is acceptable for the party that is in power. It doesn't matter if you ask nicely. It doesn't matter if you go and you give them a quick one too, in the name of justice. It nothing is going to ever justify those in power relinquishing that power, because that power is how they have defined themselves. And so in losing that power, they lose their identity. And I think that she does that, sets that tone very, very nicely, I think, in the beginning, because I can't tell you how much. I mean, this book was written in 92, right? I can't tell you how much I felt validated in my sense of hopelessness in reading just that very first section. The hopelessness that I feel just looking at the world right now, it was like, dang, this was 92. This is over 30 years ago. And we're still dealing with this. I just want everything, like she said, I just want the world to stop and I want to get off. I want to run because I don't want to deal with any of this, because no matter what I do, it's never going to be the way that they want it, because it's not what they want. Like, this is not what the people in power, this is not what they want. And so it does make you feel powerless. It does make you feel hopeless, because it makes you feel like, well, what the hell am I fighting for if it's not going to make a difference, if these people will not relinquish the power and authority that they have. So I like that she used that as a way to set the tone for why she just randomly goes off into the wilderness. Because I think for a lot of us, that's how we feel. Like, I just want to go off into a patch of land, start a commune, and be like, fuck the world. And I think a lot of us are there right now, especially in the States, with what's happening globally. It's impossible to feel like you can live. It feels like it's financially impossible to live. You to breathe, it costs you money. You can't do anything without being sucked dry of your money. And so you just want to pack your shit up and be like, I'm done. I did not. First of all, I didn't ask to be brought into this world, and this is not what I'm paying to be here for. The chaos, the foolishness, the pure ignorance and inability to recognize that all humans across the globe deserve to be free, regardless of any type of background that they have, what they look like. Um, and I was like, dang. I was like, man. I was like, that's a damn powerful way to start a story that literally is about her just going into the wilderness at first. It's like, all right, McKissick, I have to come through with this thing, because this theme is speaking nothing but facts and truth and reality to what we're even seeing in 2023, which inevitably I think is so damn sad, because it's 2023. It's over 30 years later. Why am I connecting so heavy to that introduction? But I honestly, I didn't know where this story was going to go. I was like, yo, um, it was the missing child element for me was I didn't call that. I had no idea. I was like, poo mama. And he went missing so went missing so freaking quick. But I think it also speaks to a mother's love. When everybody else gave up, I feel like for me as a mom, like I connected to that piece where she just was like, as a mother, if there's something wrong, and you do, which seriously, I don't know how to explain that feeling. Um, but as a mother, when something is off with your child. Um, I remember knowing like immediately when my daughter had RSV. She was very, very young. She was only like 3 months. And like, it was just this intuition type of situation where it was like, yeah, not just the symptoms, but it was, no, something is drastically wrong right here. And immediately I was like, no, I have to take you to emergency room. I was like, you just get this feeling. And so I love that she was like, as a mother, I would know if my child was not alive, I would feel it. And sometimes it's hard for people to understand that, because it's often like hard to verbalize this idea that you can sense things, or you can feel things, or things about your children, um, that is often feels unexplainable to the rest of the world. But I also feel like, this is someone that you have a deep connection and bond to. And I feel like, especially, I can only speak for me and my child, I feel like our souls are tied together in ways that I can feel her and sense her, in the same ways that she can feel and sense me. And I don't think she understands it right now because she's only 4, but it's amazing. So I like that she pointed that out. But I do like, I think Jennifer, you said it earlier. Yeah, when it was like, you can come with us. Like, you have the choice to come. You don't have to, to give your child up to me, but your child has to come back with us, because they can't live in this world. And believe it or not, I feel like that was the piece that I think that she wanted, because she didn't want to live in that world either. She did not want to. She did not want to live in that world anymore either, at all. Um, and I know she tried and she tried and she tried with her kid, which again think it connects to the resilience that a mother can have when it comes to her child to continue trying. But that whole idea that um, her people, that when I'm talking about the Nos, that her people had conquered all these things, hatred, greed, disease, and to know that the mother had been fighting that fight and wanted that was an escape for her. That was an out for her as well. And so it made sense to me when that offer was put on the table that she would take it. Because why not? Like, this is what you've been fighting for. This is something that you dream for, and people have tried to get it and it feels unattainable. And you have somebody coming to you and saying, hey, but in fact, this can happen, and I'm giving you the opportunity to be a part of it. Who would not take that? Child, I'd be like, fuck this world so quickly. If a monster that looked like Bigfoot, I don't care what they look like at this point, and they came to me and said, hey, you could come live in a world where you ain't got to deal with hatred and greed, capitalism, the loss of humanity, the fighting, the death, oh gosh, y'all, I'd pack my shit so quick. I would pack it. You would not catch me still leaving. I would not live here at all. But yeah, that was a good one too. Yes, it is a cycle. Mama Wit. Take me. Yep, whatever it is. Yeah. Exactly. I don't know whether they thought we like, that's a shame that this world has gotten so nasty that when they were talking about, oh yeah, aliens are real, people are like, shoot, beam me up, because at this point, take me, because I'm ready to go. When you have people universally saying like, because in the past they've been like, oh my gosh, aliens, and we have all this sci-fi, fiction being written about what could go left and what could work if there was extraterrestrial life. And people have completely pushed all of that shit to the side and said, it can't be any worse than the hell that we're living in right now. So if you want to take me hostage, just take me up, whatever you are, please take me. That's how you know the world has gone to hell. When people are saying, if there's aliens, I wouldn't. People have enough problems here that alien existence is the least of our fucking problems. And if they do exist, half of us would be like, please take us with you. All right, let's go to the second to last story, which is the Genji, which I feel like I feel like that is the way to say it, but I also could be completely wrong. This is one of those things too. I feel like this is one of those stories that speaks to practices and beliefs of ancestors, and how sometimes heeding the practices, the warnings, the blessings, anything that comes from your ancestors, child, listen, when an elder tells me something, you best believe I'm going to sit my black ass down and listen. All right, because they have tapped into knowledge, experiences, life in a way that my behind has not. So when I tell you this woman pissed me off, y'all, I like this story because it was creepy. It was so creepy. But if she would have just listened, and I think that McKissick touched on this idea that as generations keep coming onto Earth, whatever, we keep losing touch with our ancestral knowledge. And that is a problem. It is a huge problem that we don't take into consideration. We don't respect. We don't educate ourselves. We're not learning what our ancestors have practiced, what they've taught us, the lessons they've learned that they've passed on to us, there is that lack of respect. And I feel like McKissick was talking about that lack of respect for ancestral practice and knowledge in this. And because that main character didn't want to listen and respect what an elder was telling her, she fucked the whole family up. I'm like, how do you like if I'm in that position where she told me straight up, I didn't have it in my store, say less. If you ain't have it, I don't want it. I don't want it. It's certain things that you just don't do. Like certain things that your elders will tell you that you should not do. Certain things that when I tell y'all there's certain things that my grandmother and my great grandmother had me do that people would call superstitious, but I just don't. It's been ingrained in me to listen, and so I don't break it. Like I do not split poles. And people are like, are you serious? I'm like, I'm very serious. I don't do my grandmother taught me that, and it was something that was ingrained in me as a child, which I'm pretty sure she got from my great grandmother. And like somebody will split a pole with me, and of course, naturally, I walk back around the pole to make sure the pole wasn't. But grew up in an environment where like whatever, and I don't like using the term superstitious. I just don't, because I feel like our ancestors had certain beliefs and did certain practices for very good reasons. Um, and you don't disregard. I just feel like you just don't disregard, um, and call them superstitions. And so, yeah, I'm one of those people who's like that. Like I don't certain things like I don't split. So I say all to say, sis aggravated the shit out of me because I'm like, yo, how you walk into the store? You see the witch. Now she saw the witch before she walked in the store, right? And then when the lady tells you, that's not mine. Why would somebody who owns a shop tell you a product is not theirs? That is the moment that for me was like, yo, I mean, like, really though? Because if they own a store, that's an opportunity for them to make money. Why would they deny a product that they have in their store? Why would they deny an opportunity to make money? And then you know she really didn't want you to have it because she tried to sell it to you for $50. She didn't want you to have it. There was a reason why she didn't want you to have it. And then on top of that, like y'all are saying right now in the chat, like her child knowing is not shocking to me because I've also been taught that children are more susceptible and more open to seeing things that we as adults shut ourselves off to. And so being able to sense things, I think my daughter has had, I think that she's had experiences with my great grandmother that I wasn't present for. It's certain things that she says or she's done. And sometimes I think there was one point, people always feel strange, like when I tell them something, but I just like, one time we were getting ready to walk out the door, and this is just a connection to how like I feel like sometimes there are links to children, like I said, that we as adults don't have, or they're able to see and acknowledge things quicker than we are able to see and acknowledge things. And it's very simple for them. I think for them, it's very black and white, whereas adults try to reason and reckon with everything instead of just seeing it for what it is. And we were getting ready for work and school, and I was like rushing through everything and like dropping stuff. It was just like one of those chaotic mornings. I'm just going through. And my daughter looks at me, she's like, slow down, mom, slow down. I said, you're right, I'm slow down. I said, sometimes I just, I said, that's some good advice. And she turns and she says, well, you remember when I used to take care of you, right? And I said, huh? She said, girl, you know what I'm talking about. You know when I used to take care of you. And in that moment, it clicked. I was like, whoa. And I looked at her and I just said, okay. And she smiled and just went about just walked to go get the rest of her stuff. And in that split moment, for me, it was one of those things where I was like, because my great grandmother helped raise me. So when I tell y'all, like, it's so many things I feel like kids just they're at peace with. It's straightforward for them. The communications, um, and the connections that they have to things we don't have as adults anymore. Which is why I feel like, that connection that my daughter has with my great grandmother, who's her namesake, mind you, is probably, she doesn't know that. She's not even aware that she doesn't know her great grandmother. She never met her. My great grandmother passed a year. I actually got pregnant the month after she passed away. So they never met. But there's so much about them that I feel is very connected. So seeing that, I think in this story with this little girl who is very much, it's black and white for her. She's like, yo, I don't know what you just brought in that house, but I don't like it. And as adults, we always want to reason, girl, it's just a statue. There's nothing wrong with it. And let me tell you, if my child ever points at something or someone and tells me something ain't right, you best believe I'm taking her word for it. I ain't finna argue with her. It ain't gonna be no back and forth. We are not, there's no conversation happening, because I feel like my child is going to see things and can see the world in a way that I can't. So if my daughter would have came up to me and said, I don't know what you just brought in that house, but I don't like it. And then the moment where she's like, yes, Mr. Feathers, warmth and love, and just that, I think also that speaks to believe what kids tell you when they tell you stuff. When kids tell you stuff, believe them. We always want to, I think, downplay what kids are feeling and what they're experiencing and what they can see, because we want to explain everything away. Her mother had an excuse for, this woman annoyed me so much because she had an excuse for everything. She literally had an excuse for everything. And it was like, what happened. And she knew what happened, because even the parts of the short story, right, that were like italicized, you could tell she kept thinking back to when she went to that shop and the shop owner was telling her, like, this is what you're potentially walking into. I just want you to know that. And so she knew the entire time that stuff was not right. And I'm like, girl, if you would have just listened the first time around, when your elder told you something with more knowledge and more experience, don't bring that in your house. It's the same reason why now I don't invite everyone to cross my threshold. I am very, very big on that. I remember when I first got this house, I kept getting asked, "Are you going to have a housewarming? Are you going to have a housewarming?" No, I'm not. Because I too am one of those people that is very mindful about the things that you bring into your household, and not even just objects, but the energy and the energy of other humans that you bring into your household, because it is a pain in the ass to get rid of it once it's here, mind you. So I I like this one because the creep factor was excellent. Very creepy. But I was also very annoyed because her family lost everything. They lost that whole house with their stuff in it. They left everything in that house because she didn't want to listen. So the consequences, once again, I think it's interesting because I don't know if y'all noticed this. In the Conjure Brother, we got this consequences of when children don't listen. And in this one, we got consequences of when adults don't listen. And I like that McKissick did that, because we often chastise children for not listening, and I'm guilty of this too because I have a toddler and I'm always on her backside about not listening. But I love this contrasting um, imagery that we get in this one with the same way that kids don't listen, adults don't listen, and they too have consequences that they have to deal with as a result of their not listening. Good night, Kim. Right? Right? Because when she burned Mr. Feathers, Jennifer, I was like, oh no. Like when I tell y'all, like I slammed the book, I slammed the damn book down. I was pissed. I was like, how did you think it was even remotely okay? Because even at that point, I was like, your husband at this point is saying something is not right. You know just as well as I do that something is not right. And the fact that she took both of them and put it in the and burned them, right? I was like, oh no. I said, now she burned Mr. Feathers, and Mr. Feathers is the only thing that is keeping this place balanced right now. And so I like the fact that Mr. Feathers went into the cat because as soon as the little girl said that, I was like, oh, thank God. Because I was pissed. I was like, you know that Mr. Feathers, like, first of all, I was pissed because Mr. Feathers, like, your child was very attached to it, right? And saw it as such a positive thing. And then you have the audacity to like burn it. Oh gosh. Okay. Let's see. Yes, missing we don't have company much. Yeah, anything that I can't get rid of. The shopkeeper should have been deleted from the. Oh, that would have been a fun crossover. Yeah. Yep. Exactly. 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 Oh, Jennifer. Okay. Let's go into this last story very quickly. Because I actually have to use the restroom, y'all. It's crazy. I drank some tea before this live and did not use the restroom, and now I'm paying for it. Okay, the chicken coop monster. I think that this one, she said it was semi autobiographical. I love that the theme of this one is that um, love over. I don't want to say it wrong because I like the wording of it, and I thought the wording was great. How did they phrase it? Love dries out fear. I like that. I think that was in this entire story. We get the first phrase being fear is the parent of monsters, but then love is that opposite that drives the fear out. So she creates yes, Jennifer, the perfect. She creates her own monsters because of this fear of the unknown, especially related to her parents divorcing. Like how do you cope with something, especially when you're knowledgeable? Like my parents divorced when I was younger and I don't really remember it. So that experience for me was a little different. So I'm always curious about how kids who are older, who are consciously aware that their parents are splitting up, how that feels. And so using this idea of, you know, fear is what creates our monsters, and then you have to find that love to drive that fear out. To be able to deal with your monsters. And the monsters, I think that this character, of course, is dealing with, it being semi-autobiographical, is the fact that her parents are divorcing. And that is a fearful and scary thing to deal with as a kid. I think this is one of those ones too that is a story that I would read to my child when we start dealing with being afraid of things, or when we're walking into a situation that gives us fears. I think that McKissick also wrote these stories that are very And I say read to, but I think that these stories also highlight, if I don't know if any of you got this vibe when you were reading this, it highlights the beauty of oral storytelling as well. So these stories are not stories that technically I think have to remain and exist on page. Like these are stories that you can pass on through oral storytelling, which is a huge, I think, aspect of the Black community that um, enough people don't know about outside of the Black community, the beauty and the history of oral storytelling, especially when your history is not kept, it's not written. A lot of things do get lost. And so I think for a story like this is the perfect story I think that I would use um, as an oral story telling moment, where if I have, my kid is dealing with a big shift or change and they're scared, or kids also develop fears out of anything and everything, that this would be a good story to tell as an example of um, that love is what's going to drive out that fear and give you the courage to stand up um, to those monsters. And it's not always a monster that we know what it looks like. You know what I'm saying? I think in some of these stories we're dealing with very um, physical, visually we can see these monsters. And I think in this one we never really know what the monster is, because um, it's more of, I think, a feeling, an emotion, um, this conjured up monster that is, like you said, Jennifer, a result of having that fear. Um, and I thought that that was an interesting way to do it, because I think part of me in reading this, I was like, dang, y'all, when she kept talking about this damn monster in this chicken coop, I'm like, well, what is it? What does it look like? And the doors opening up, and then people are screaming. The girl who got cut with a nail, she's screaming. I'm thinking like, well, what does this monster look like? Um, and then even when she confronts it, it's never we never know what it looks like. And I thought that was very unique when we're getting very corporal examples of monsters throughout the rest of this book. This is the one where we're thinking about um, self-inflicted monsters, ones that we create, these beasts that we create of our own, when we allow fear to inhibit us. It's, I don't know. And I like that her grandfather told her, he gave her that love. Um, Almost that like, I if there's one thing for certain, know that I love you, and that love that I have for you is enough to move throughout the world. That support that you have, it can change a lot, but I like that he told her, I can't fight this battle for you. And for me, that resonated. Um, I resonated with that piece of the story as a parent, because there's moments when I want to be so protective of my daughter, right? I'm going to want to fight every battle that she has. And there, there's this aspect of the story that reminded me that I cannot fight her battles for her. And some of her toughest moments, um, I will not be there, and I can't fight it for her, because you don't learn anything that way, really, And I like that he said, if I do this for you, it's just going to come back and find a new way to bother you. You've got to fight this battle by yourself. And I think as a parent, the only thing that you can do is give, or just a caregiver in general, um, if you're playing a big role in a child's life, the only thing that you can do is give them that love, and foster that courage for them to be able to do it by themselves. Give them that confidence to be able to do it by themselves, because you can't do it for them. You can't fight every battle. They will never learn, and they will just keep running in this cycle of having to deal with these same monsters, this same fear. Um, but knowing that they have that love and support and guidance behind them gives them the courage and strength to go out into the world and do these things by themselves. So if I had to pick two, I think that are, I mean, just great. These are all great stories for kids in a historical sense. But I think in terms of like going through life, um, and using these, I think, as like very, very direct teaching tools, I definitely would use Conjure Brother and the Chicken Coop Monster. I really do. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That I read Bird Box and I was like, you never know what it is. Yeah, absolutely. Yes, yes, that is a good point. That is a good point. There was some stuff going on there from the paternal side, that gentleness. All right, y'all. That was our last one. Um, 5-star collection. Great conversation, y'all. This was great. I love that so many of you enjoyed this, man. Like y'all have no idea. Like I don't know why I took that so personally. Not just because it was my selection for our group, but I think that to pick up for a community, I think sometimes, and not y'all, but I'm just saying like the bookish community at large sometimes, that doesn't necessarily pick up a lot of children's literature, especially not a lot of older um, children's literature. When I talk about like bookish, like social media, it was nice to see so many people enjoy, especially a duo that I highly, highly, highly respect. Um, I mean, highly, highly respect Patricia McKissick and Brian Pickney. Like a lot of respect for what they've done for um, Black children's literature. They've moved mountains um, to really what you see in terms of like Black children's writers right now. They paved the way for a lot of people to exist the way that they exist right now. They push through a lot of barriers to be able to exist the way that they exist right now, and so I have a lot of respect for them. And so it's nice to see so many other people in this community um, having respect for them as well. You know, yeah. Salter, so nice to see you. Yes, no, I don't know why I give bump it up to 5. Sometimes talking it out helps, and it's just no flaws with it. Like there's nothing, like I said, like my least favorite story is kind of hard to say. I mean, if I had to pick one, it would be my least favorite. But I mean, there was so much to take from it. Um, it is such a beautiful collection, such a beautiful work of art. Um, Hats off to, of course, to McKissick and Pickney for the amazing things that they done. And I believe we didn't really even get to talk about it, but Pickney's work definitely complemented um, this. I can't imagine what it would have been like to read this book when it first got printed, um, especially, with this coming out so long ago. And to receive such, amazing, amazing accolades for this book. Love it. Love to see it. Hi, Lisa. We are wrapping up. Yes. Thank you, Pat. Thank you, Pat. So happy to see you here. Hi, Robin. um, Definitely interested in picking it up. Yes, yes, yes. I just pick up any Patricia McKissick has written, if I'm thinking right, I believe she's written over 100 books. Um, at least I think that was the count the last time I went and I looked at how many she had written. I believe it is over 100 books. Um, Definitely check out some of her other works, y'all. You won't be disappointed. Brian Pickney has done an extensive, his entire family. I think I've talked about Brian Pickney before. Like his whole family is kind of in the game. His wife, his father, who is the late Jerry Pickney. Um, yeah, you will not be disappointed, I promise. Um, Yay. I hope you really, really enjoy it, Luna. It is it's a beautiful book. Yeah, she's written a lot. She's written a heck of a lot. And I need to do better. I've read some of her picture books, but I need to do better about exploring more of her backlist. But she's done a lot. She's done a whole lot. Um, a whole lot for the community. Yeah, it will. I think too for me, Ulysses, I think like it'll take on new meanings for me as my daughter continues to get older. I think every time, like, as she goes through different stages of life, when I revisit this, like, I will keep drawing different things out of it to kind of, um, share with her. I really do think that. But thank you y'all for such a wonderful and enlightening and fulfilling conversation. This definitely was one of the highlights of my day. I love talking about this book. Um, so yes, if you've never read Julius Lester before, what are you doing? But I'm done. I'm sorry. I just saw Julius Lester and I just had to say that. Um, but yes, definitely. Thank you for this wonderful conversation. Let me before I go, because I want to make sure I'm giving you accurate information. The next live show should be, hold on, the 6th, I believe, is the next one. If I'm looking at all the dates right, it should be November 6th, and it is going to be hosted by, um, it's on Books with Brandy's channel. And she is doing this conversation with Bree because they were both co-hosts for the laissez-faire streetcar area of Toulouse Parish, and they're going to be discussing Brittany S. Lewis's The Dark Place, and it's going to be at 7 p.m. EST. So if you're looking for the next group read live show, that is the one that will be next. And if you missed it and you want to, watch it on playback, Monet did on October 29th, S.A. Cosby's All the Sinners Bleed, and that was for the St. Germain graveyard part of Toulouse Parish. So be sure to either go back and watch Monet's video or be present for Brandy and Bree's live show that is happening in the next couple of days. And I will see y'all soon. Hopefully, I will get everything done and we can do the November new release live tomorrow night. I will keep y'all updated, and I will be sharing that across social media. And I will, in my Discord, for y'all who are in my Discord, I will share that information with y'all. But have a good night, everyone.